Hey there everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist and welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first 2 novels. One started a series, one a standalone. And on my channel, I like to talk about what I consider to be the heart of writing. That's the characters. And the heart of their characters is their psychology. So that's the angle I like to take with pretty much everything I talk about on my channel. Okay guys, so we are in the second day of my week of fire, celebrating Michele Quirke's new book, The Fires of Treason. And today I wanted to tackle probably my favorite topic this week, and that is sibling relationships. So at the center of The Fires of Treason is Gregory's relationship with his little sister, Elizabeth, and her relationship with him. And I wanted to talk about kind of the psychology of siblings for a little bit, because I don't see them addressed in books very much. And I think Michele does such a good job in this book of getting it right. So I just wanted to give you guys a little psychology behind sibling bonds. So first and foremost, let's define sibling here, because yeah, there's a lot of different types. You have a full sibling, who is someone who shares the same mother, the same father. You have a half sibling who shares one parent but not the other. So you guys might have the same father but not the same mother, or vice versa. You have step sibling, which is you do not share any blood, but by law you are siblings because one of your parents married one of their parents. And you have step siblings. Let's see, adopted sibling. This one I include because some people make the distinction, some people don't. Adopted sibling, you don't share any blood whatsoever, but by law you are considered siblings because your parents by law are the parents of your sibling. Then you have milk siblings, which doesn't come up quite as much. These are siblings, these are children that were nursed by the same woman. And in some cultures there are rules about if you nursed from the same woman, you cannot be involved in a romantic relationship when you get older. So that's a milk sibling. Last one, 3/4 sibling. This one I learned about in grad school, and yeah, you're not going to see it very much. Basically, a 3/4 sibling is a sibling that you are related to more than a half sibling, but not as much as a full sibling. So how exactly does that work? I'll give you guys just a real brief scenario. And this is the one I was given. So you have a pair of parents, a father and a mother. They have, let's say they have a daughter. And the father, unfortunately, passes away. Pick a reason, but he passes away. And in their culture, the family of the father is expected to look after the father's widow. So in this case, he has a brother, and his brother steps in and marries his brother's widow. So basically the daughter that's already born, this is her uncle. And so they get married, and then they have a child. And that child would be a 3/4 sibling and a cousin to the first child. Because they share more blood than a half sibling, but not as much as if it was their first father. Does that make sense? Okay. Like I said, that last one, I don't think I see it pop up except honestly in research, but since it is there, I wanted to include it. So one of the things I think that people focus on the most with sibling relationships is the sibling rivalry. And yeah, I mean, that seems to have been the defining factor for a lot of people that write sibling relationships. And it's up in the air what actually causes sibling rivalry. And as always with anything with psychology, this is going to vary from family to family. But one thing they have found, that sibling rivalry does have a lot to do with how close in age the siblings are. So basically in child development, we have what we call developmental stages. So these are stages of life where you're trying to accomplish some kind of milestone. It might be gaining independence, like by learning to talk, learning to use the toilet, that kind of thing. It may be branching out from the family in adolescence, those kind of things. So we basically have it divided into 3 sections when it comes to sibling rivalry. You have siblings that are between 1 and 2 years apart, siblings that are between 2 and 4 years apart, and siblings that are 5 years or more apart. So the least sibling rivalry usually is 1 to 2 years apart. Reason being, they are in the same developmental stage. So they are trying to accomplish the same milestones. And so they're almost helping each other to reach these steps in development. So there isn't this sense of competition because they're going for the same goal. Then you have siblings who are 5 years or more apart. These guys have 2 developmental stages minimum between them. So this means that the oldest sibling is tackling milestones that the youngest sibling really even can't completely comprehend yet. So they're not going to be aiming for these same goals. So again, no competition, or very minimal competition. Then you have the 2 to 4. These kids are 1 developmental stage apart, give or take. And this is where you usually get the most competition, because usually 1 developmental stage apart, the younger sibling kind of still sees that milestone the older sibling's aiming for as something achievable, even though they haven't quite hit that age range yet. So there's competition, and they're striving for the same goal, but not working together, trying to outdo. And so that's one theory that seems to have a lot of backing to it, but it's not by any means the only reason we have sibling rivalry, but I wanted to bring that up. The other thing, and I bring this up because I think it's relevant to the Fires of Treason book, is sometimes you have a cultural difference in goals. Like, for instance, in Fires of Treason, Gregory is the older male, the heir to the throne, and his little sister Elizabeth is the youngest, and she's female. In the time period and culture that this book is set in, males had very different goals than females. So even if they were in this competition type developmental stage scenario, it might not apply to them because they each have different goals that they have to meet by their society. Now, whether that changes or not, depending on what their personality is another issue, but I do think it's relevant to bring up. Next thing, and I think this is probably the most important topic, so I'm gonna probably spend a little more time on this one, and that is bonding and attachment. Those of you who have studied psychology in any form have probably heard the term attachment, and that is essentially a relationship that a child forms with a caregiver about whether or not essentially the caregiver is reliable. We have secure attachment, we have insecure attachment. So there are 3 types, thereabouts, of insecure attachment. Secure attachment is exactly what it sounds like. It's an attachment that is healthy and has been, basically the child knows their needs can be met. Insecure attachment, we have anxious preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, and fearful avoidant. And each of these produces different behaviors in the child. So I might do a whole video at some point on bonding and attachment if you guys want me to. But in a nutshell, anxious preoccupied is negative self-image and positive image of others. Dismissive avoidant is positive image of self, negative image of others. Fearful avoidant is what we call, honestly, the unstable. So it fluctuates, kind of goes back and forth. So the reason I bring this up is that a lot of times we have people assuming that attachment is only with parents. Not true. Not true. You form attachments with whomever is in your immediate circle, essentially. You form attachments with friends, you form attachments with siblings. So that's what I want to talk about here, is the attachment with siblings. So there was an experiment, and you guys might have heard of this one. It's called the strange situation. And what it was done to determine and essentially view attachment in infants with their parents. So in the strange situation, what would happen is a mother would come in with her young child, usually around a year old, and she would sit and play with the child for a little bit, and then she would leave, and they would see how the child reacted to her leaving and how they would react when she came back. And then they added in a second scenario in that they would introduce a stranger that would come in while the mom was with the child and would just sit there, a lot of times reading a book or doing something by themselves. And then the mom would leave again, and the stranger would attempt to comfort the child after the mother had left. And they would see how the child reacted to the stranger. And then the mom would come back. So they also did one with siblings with this. And so in this scenario, you have a mother who has like a 1-year-old child, and they also have an older sibling. So in this scenario, they kind of did the same thing, but instead of the baby being alone, they had an older sibling with them. And they were observing whether or not the older sibling was capable of comforting the infant. And they found some very interesting stuff with this. But I think probably what's most relevant, and what I think is most relevant with Fires of Treason, and that she gets very right. If there is an insecure attachment with the parent, there is usually going to be a secure attachment with the sibling. Because when the parent is either unavailable or is not fulfilling the task, the child finds someone else that will. And in a lot of cases, it is the older sibling. So what they essentially learned is that if there is more than just the parent and child, if there are other people in the family, siblings, grandparents, whatever, the child will seek out attachment with whomever will give them what they need. And in, like I said, a lot of cases, that was an older sibling. So that's why in some of these cases, you have these families where the child is like completely uninterested in the parent, but they are very firmly attached to their sibling because the sibling has essentially taken on a parental role. So the other element they learned from this is that there is a gender difference. There was a trend of the sex of the older sibling and the sex of the younger sibling having an impact on the bonding. And what they found was that there was a scale of most likely to have a very strong bond and least likely to have a very strong bond. And what they found was the strongest one was sister-sister. And they think that has to do with essentially society. It basically kind of expects women to be open and emotional and that kind of thing. So when it came to comforting an infant, then that was something that was socially acceptable and pushed, basically. Next, they found older brother, younger sister, because there was, for the most part, I mean, this all can change when society changes, but at the time of this experiment, older brothers were essentially pushed by society stereotyped parents to be protective of younger siblings, particularly younger sisters. So if the younger infant was crying, the older brother felt it was his duty to protect and comfort her. Then you had older sister, younger brother. Same kind of thing. The sisters are generally pushed and taught to be emotional and nurturing and that kind of thing. And then last one was brother. And they really think this comes from, again, societal expectations. Unfortunately, males are generally expected not to be as nurturing or emotional, or to show, as many traits of physical affection. Now, this isn't, 100% true. I'm just throwing this out. This is an average, okay? But something I think that's very interesting and something to kind of keep in mind. There's obviously more to sibling relationships than what I have mentioned here. I don't want this video to be like 50 minutes long. So I just wanted to sum up the major ones in this video. So I hope you guys found it interesting. As always, if you have suggestions, questions, etc., just drop them below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. If you don't want to miss when I upload, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you know whenever a new video goes up. I will be putting up a video every day this week to celebrate Fires of Treason coming out on Friday. If you don't want to miss when I upload on a regular basis, I'll upload about twice a week generally. Once at the beginning, once at the end of the week. And until tomorrow, I hope you guys enjoy, have fun, stay safe, and have a good one.